What's going on? Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Vikings Berserker Brunch. We're going to be covering Season 5, Episode 19, What Happens in the Cave. Very good episode. Pretty solid. Couple of little quips I'll go on or rants. Other than that, I enjoyed the episode, as always. Have my co-host, Mackenzie Old Burns. How are you doing today? You're muted.
Oh, there you go. It's the one before the finale, so it's kind of a crazy episode. It seemed more dramatic in the promo than it actually is, but it's good, and I'm happy to be here as always.
That's a really good point. Uh, And my other guest, the great Top Shelf Fandom from Top Shelf Fandom, Justin Thomas. How are you doing, man? And did they hype up this episode a little too much?
Well, in all fairness, I mean, I think all television, every medium in entertainment is hyped up beyond belief. So, I mean, it's always this season's better than every single season you've ever seen before. Like every other season was dog shit compared to this. Everybody gets all hype about it. They're like, oh, they said it's going to be good. I'm like, yeah, it's called marketing. So, yeah, a little bit, but I was for the end game. I think, and we'll talk about it. We got some players in the right positions here. Let's see if they can, you know um, actually carry out the play successfully, meaning stick the landing. So yeah, I liked it though. It was good.
Very true. There was a lot more setup and exposition in this episode than I previously was intending. Uh, uh, we got a couple of one-on-one fights. One nice brutal one with Uba and King Frodo. You know, he already had found the ring and destroyed it by that point, so no worries. Um, but we'll go first to Hell or Iceland, where Floki is, and kind of what that represents, and him being stuck in this cave, finding the Holy Grail, so to speak. And what do you think that means in the long run? I think thinking about it a little more, uh, it does have some symbolism and meaning, but it seems to just be dragging on too long for us fans. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, obviously, I'm not a huge fan of Iceland. Again, I'm very much invested in these shows, but I went out of my way not to learn anybody's name on that in that actual plot thread other than Floki. So the cave, the way I just take it is that he was in search of just ending it, pretty much looking either for his Valhalla or his what is it, something with a F. Their hell, and he ends up seeping out his gods and maybe trying to bring himself to an end from what it looked like, and finding a true embracement of hell when he sees the cross. So this whole thing has been like this cult like mission, as I've said before, about him recruiting all of these very 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 fervent pagan followers, and bringing them to Iceland, and seeing how the community works out. So when you have this perfect idea in your head of how society will work with all the people that have the same beliefs as you, and it blows up in your face, that sucks. Now it really is blowing up in his face with the volcano having looks like a mild eruption at the very least, and also the cross doesn't help. The only thing I take from that is that I think that there was the discovery that the Christian monks had been there before the Danes. So I think that they might be sticking to some actual history on that.
True. He could also take it as maybe not a vision, but a representation of the future that he may have to fight. So he gets stuck in this cave and he's going to wait out Ragnarok, I guess you would say. And only a few gods survive. I think Floki will be one of the gods to survive Ragnarok. And they spread through word of mouth the religion again, or the stories of the Norse gods after Ragnarok. So it didn't completely end the religion, uh, because we know it's still practiced to this day. So I do think he will be one of the namesakes of the religion in the end. Kinsey?
finding the button is like a challenge today. I most definitely feel that this is where kind of they want to set up Floki's like end for this season. They'll probably have a scene with him next episode, but it's just him and that pile of basically rubble that he's in. But for the entirety of the scene, it's just him going through this final, I guess, exploration of what the cave is, because he's probably been a majority of Iceland, or what is of known of Iceland, since like, let me see if I can discover this. And then when he gets there and he finds, I guess, a cup or a bowl that would have been used probably for the Holy Sacrament, like the Eucharist, he just like giggles, like hee hee, like look what I just found. And then he sees obviously the cross. So it's like, well, unless Floki's gonna convert to the Christian God, which I don't think he will, it's just a funny scene for him because there's not that much obviously dialogue because it's just him and you just have to read his face. But it's kind of just a funny thing. He just goes hee hee, and then he's like with the bowl in his hand.
It's a good point because you could sum this up in one sentence. This whole scene: Floki laughs, he cries, he may die. I've just we kind of got his range of emotions there, and we finally got to see him get to act a little bit. It's been a while since we heard Floki laugh, isn't it, Justin? It's been a bit.
Yeah, like a little giggle.
Absolutely. I think that one thing to take away too is this is, again, like a failed venture for him on all fronts. I mean, I personally don't think it went well. That's just my opinion. I don't think it went swimmingly with everybody on the in Iceland. So now the gods, when he's seeking out, his again last like semblance of hope for his ways, it's just just God. He looks at it as those gods mocking him. So I think it's probably important just to mention that the way in which the Vikings and are really any pagans conduct their beliefs is in a way that they have more than one deity. You know what I mean? So that they do believe in the other gods. They just don't believe they're like the ones they should favor and all that and so forth. So it's kind of like the arch enemy in many ways. Floki might not believe in the Christian God as much as the other ones do, but they assimilated very quickly because of that, because their religion allowed them to have more than one. In the Christian religions, like Jesus, else you're going to hell. So it doesn't work quite that way. But yeah, it's just interesting. See where they go with it.
Yeah,
you could say they were very flexible philosophically as a race, even though they were barbarians. Do not get any doubt out of your mind. They were crazy, but they were also intelligent. So scary combo. Go ahead, Kenzie.
Yeah, no, it's just, and when you first watch it, you're like, this is how the character of Floki like potentially could die, is just in a cave. It's like, really? After all that we've been through with this character, just for him to just die in a cave, it'll just be like the stupidest thing ever. So hopefully in the next episode he somehow gets out of the cave. If not, who knows? It's a lot for a 2-minute scene, that pretty much.
Yeah, I think we should read into it for a few hours and really try to, bleed it dry. But it also, realistically, when a character loses their cornerstone, kind of a Westworld reference, but not meant to be, then they are dead for the story. So if Floki loses his way, meaning like loses his faith in what he's doing and so forth, do you guys see him? I guess this is a question for you guys or anybody in the chat. Do you guys see him as necessarily even willing to go back? Do you think if he gets out of this cave, he'll leave Iceland? I guess that's like, what does this event do for him as far as his decision making in the next few episodes, or maybe just one episode? It might push him to actually leave because he feels that on all fronts this failed, but it also might just bring him into a deep state of depression as well. Obviously, it probably just more of a crazy laugh, even for Floki, than the playful, like kind of borderline, like heavily autistic laugh that he has going on. But so interesting little plot thread there and action. We just have to see what he makes out of it. What does Floki take away from this really exciting new experience? Probably a lot of carbon dioxide, but besides that, some spiritual stuff.
I mean, he can either give up or fight it. At this point, Floki might as well fight it. I feel like someone else is gonna have to land on Iceland at this point. So, like, he's gonna be on the verge of death and get saved by someone or whatever. Maybe that's too close to what happened to Lagatha, but
Maybe it'd be great if like a whole bunch of like writers that could write a enticing storyline that we could be immersed in would land on that island. That'd be great.
I don't know. I can tell I'm pissing you off. We'll go to the next scene. No, I'm joking. Well, you could make an argument Fluffy would be Seer. You can make an argument for many things. I just say they need to speed up the plot line a little bit. Let us know what the hell's going on. What's this true meaning? That's
Yeah. It's the trials and tribulations he must go through. I guess this is not just, is he done with that, or is this one more that he's going to go through and take some perspective away from it? And what is that insight going to do for him as far as its decision making? Because, I'm a heavy believer, along with Mackenzie and you, and he will show up in the very last episodes, or the very last, after being gone for a long time, and be the Seer. I think that'd be a cool little nod, but it's something that's likely to happen as far as production goes as well. He doesn't have to come to set, utilize a good character, but there's really nothing else for him to do in that but in between time, unless you want to see him.
Dropped for just a second, but
you dropped for a second.
There you go. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's just I feel like they could leave him on this note for the rest of the season, almost, and then pick us back up with him maybe 2 episodes into the season premiere or something, like in the season 2 episode, as we figure out what happens, because that'd be a dramatic end for Floki's season 5 arc, almost.
He's got to shoot some flashback scenes for Westworld, so he needs a break anyway. No, I think that's pretty well said.
Yeah.
That's a good point. They have to do something with him. But let me welcome everyone in the chat. Bobby Catalano, The White Tupac, and Forrest Berta. Thank you all for coming out. And hopefully some more will flow in. The YouTube notifications have been crazy. So with that, we'll kind of segue into Bjorn and Harold Finehair and Magnus, their little storm adventure. Understandably, Harold's a little bit frustrated. Bjorn's just bossing him around, right? I want your army. I'm going to help you do this. All he has is himself, really, and Gunhild at this point. And I have to say, Finehair is a pretty patient man. Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we're seeing here is the degree of separation between Bjorn and Harold, and it's something that needs to happen. This obviously is not an advantageous partnership for Harold, and it seems to me, but it has seemed to me plenty of times this season, especially, that Bjorn has been doing things blatantly on purpose. Just a quick example, Magnus, I never took it as he believed he was his brother. It just seemed like, by the way he was acting, that he's just like not buying it, but hey, I'll like utilize this, use it to my advantage. But it does seem like he is on purpose just been rubbing the puppy's nose in the on the pee pad or whatever you dog people do. He's been rubbing his face in some shit. So it seems like he is trying to provoke him, and we do need that. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but we do need Harold to go on his own way. He needs to get away from the Sons of Ragnar. He has to be sick as hell of them already. So he needs to get on his own path that doesn't depend on one of them giving him some deal or helping him in any, whether it's in politics or a militaristic way. It's just he has to separate in order for this story to move on.
Yeah, he's always been surrounded by people that outshine him in a sense. And we got a good thing and a question in the chat. Andy Burnett says, is it possible that Floki comes back to Norway as a priest after seeing the cross in the cave? He realizes that there is only one God at some point. Maybe he goes through a process of becoming Christian. That is an interesting thought.
And that goes, we were talking about this before we went on. It's something that is ongoing theme in the series, but also especially in this episode of people weighing their options as far as the gods. We see this with Uba and so forth, seeing which faith is going to work for them. That would be interesting. I would bet against it, but I think that's a good example of what the show should be doing, is making us ponder these things. That's good entertainment right there, and that's a good insight. Because it very well could.
And Kenzie, your thoughts on that thought about Floki, and as well Harold and Bjorn?
I feel like Floki's kind of the last character, really, to have his faith or have a crisis of faith, almost in a sense, because he did a tiny bit with all the gods when he was in Iceland, but it's never been a faith that really was more or less the polar opposite of what Odin and everyone, like the pagan gods, are, because like Ube had the Christian god, Vitsark has the Buddhist god, but it's Bjorn and Ivar that have stayed with Odin, and they haven't done that yet. Even Lagartha gets touched with Christianity, and so does Torby. So
Yeah, and Floki, the whole time he was in the cave, was looking for his gods. When he was hearing the volcanoes, it was the dwarves forging the gods' weapons.
Yeah, that's a cool analogy right there that I'm gonna steal for the video I'm making today. So if anybody's watching that, I'm a piece of crap, and expect that to be in there. I like that. I also, going into allegory of the cave is something that I always bring up when it comes to Westworld, because it applies, but it definitely applies for this situation as well. Plato's allegory of the cave. He is going into the darkness to find light. He's going into the looking for enlightenment through the shadows, and it's just a interesting story thread. It's an interesting way to end this. And again, I just really think it's great that they're ending this. I don't want him to kill Floki, but I don't look forward to seeing him also work out his issues for like another 7 episodes. I would rather see him get out of the cave or do whatever he's going to do, and then just have him pop up, or leave it ambiguous. You know what I mean? Maybe we don't see and he pops up as a seer. I think that works thematically.
The thing in the show is Floki asked for his gods and got the Christian god. Uba asked for Thor help from the Allfather and got help from the Allfather. Do you think that symbolizes something? I know we're freaking breaking down a 5 minutes of scene. Sorry, but
yeah, that's what that's what I was saying. Definitely, I think that this has been driven throughout the whole series, quite frequently. I mean, almost at every episode, you have people making at least a comment or two about how the gods are either in competition with each other, or a lot of people saying how they are similar in so many ways. I find it to be very interesting. I think it's completely right. We're supposed to see this internal struggle, Faulkner bracing the inner Faulkner, and it's something that they would have been dealing with. And again, the pagans are more able to, I believe, accept the existence of another god. It's just he's not better than theirs, because theirs have a lot more cool weapons and stuff, which I'm down with. If it goes by weapons, I'm going pagan all the way.
Yeah, I have a good point on this later when we talk about Uba, because we're going to get into this again. So go ahead, Kenzie, with your thoughts on Harold and Bjorn and Gunhild, and you can throw in Magnus as well. I know we want to talk about Magnus.
Yeah. These two specifically have a weird relationship because of obviously what's going on. Harold kind of checks Bjorn, and it's just like, these people, majority of them are my army, so whatever you do is like, you're going to try and kill people that follow me instead of follow you, for this moment. But before they can get too deep into a battle, Gunhild is just like, stop it, and like slaps him across the face, like, which
that was priceless.
Which I don't think really, none of really of his other, I guess, wives / like lovers has ever done, and it makes him actually like be like, oh, okay, I have to stop now. But it's the fact that she feels that she's strong enough to get between the two of them, especially with what was going on, and because we know she kind of has affection for the two of them. She kind of has like the affection for the two of them, and then there's them like not knowing exactly where they are, but it's like it's like, I think I recognize the mountains over there. It's just like, really? Um,
Bjorn's so confident, isn't he, Justin?
It's crazy. Well, this I was talking about this little after show called After Buzz TV or something, where three dudes go over Vikings, and it's something that you should maybe check out once. And they pointed out how talented he was and how much of a good essentially navigator he was, because he points right away and says, I recognize those mountains. It's like, motherfucker, those are mountains. I think I recognize those mountains. Like that, you should, you went out in on your walkabout into the vast wilderness in this area. Like, don't point and say, I think I recognize those mountains. Mountains are very, very, they're big, they're mountains. So that's not like the best sign. But again, it's just like the whole, I'm gonna go look at the battleground and see if it's good ground for us to fight on. It's like, you're a genius. And it's like, I think I know those mountains. It's like, well, okay, so is there anything that's helpful though? It is what it is.
He thinks he's invincible, right? And this is a good point. Go back to Kenzie had a good point earlier. She thinks Bjorn is going to get gravely injured in the battle next episode. And this is going to possibly put Bjorn in check and have him go on the adventure we would love him to go on. You know, he pulls himself back together, kind of a whole Ragnar deal, which it seems all the sons of Ragnar are going through different stages of Ragnar's life, which I think is pretty poetic, and I like that. Kenzie, go ahead.
But yeah, the first kind of part or sequence of this scene is when they're in the rain on the ship, and Bjorn asks Althra or something, whatever her name is, I can't remember because it's wind and rain, to watch over Magnus, but he talks about how he wants to pray to Jesus Christ. Like, he calls out for Jesus, which, what was it, like 3 episodes ago, who's like, the words of Jesus Christ will never be spoken again. It's like, you're just going back on what you wanted to eliminate by calling out to Jesus to save you. Like, yeah, weirdo. But she checks him in that. It's kind of funny. But
the situation in which he is praising the pagan gods, that's advantageous in that scenario, because he was playing to the to the room. He's playing the herald, and everybody else, because that was right after they lost in Morton. So now you see it, like I said before the stream, there's no atheists and foxholes, essentially. So you see the true colors come out, or true character comes out, other than the characterization, when their backs are against the wall and they're facing high stakes. And I think it's a pretty high stakes situation. So again, just quickly, my opinion is him praying to the Christian gods makes a lot more sense than him being such a devout pagan, because if he really is who he says he is, he wouldn't have such a alliance, or loyalty to the pagan religion. It just wouldn't be as embedded at him. His formative years were spent at a Christian court. So I don't understand why they think that that's the weird part. It's weird that he definitely is lying essentially to Harold, or playing up his beliefs maybe more, but in the end we all have doubts, and that goes again with it. But to me, this further proves that he is who he is. But it seems like Bjorn now thinks that this is a sure sign that he's not, which I was under the influence that Bjorn didn't ever think he was, again. But it is, I mean, it is what it is, and we see it happen with everybody. When you're about to, you think you're about to die, you just kind of try to cover all your ends, check all the boxes, and stack the deck, and just start praying to Allah, start praying to Muhammad, everybody.
As much as I agree with you, this does define, and it makes me believe that Magnus is really Ragnar. Well, I don't know if he is Ragnar's son. Doesn't really matter. He thinks he's Ragnar's son. I think he believes it. And there was a point when he was standing on the beach, he kind of looked like Sigrid. I'm not gonna lie. So with that, I think he also, you're right, he grew up with that. That's something that he did his whole life. And Bjorn is gonna, the only reason he has reservations because he does not trust Christianity in the slightest. You saw how crazy he went with Uba. I don't know if he thinks Magnus isn't really who he says he is, but he knows Magnus talked it up a whole bunch. He dug himself basically a hole that he needed to stay in, and this brought out his true colors in a sense in Bjorn's eyes. But hey, who knows?
Yeah, I just had one last thing. I just, I hope that it would just be him showing that he is actually who he says he is. But from the way that it is depicted, it's supposed to be telling the audience that now for sure they know he's a turncoat. Because, I mean, they have made sure, like we talked about last week, to make him as obnoxious as possible, Magnus. So, but Bjorn seems to truly be frazzled by that and definitely intrigued, if not, about to put an axe in the back of his head. So it's just, sadly, I think that's the way it's going to go. Is that was the that was the last straw, and that's where they found him out, which I just think doesn't jive, but it is what it is. The only other thing on it is, like when somebody, it's always a big red flag, like when I call it virtue signaling a lot. You see it on the internet, like people that always like talk about how like good they are, or how people better not like beat their wife in front of them, else they'll kick their ass. Like they make like very blatant like statements that everybody agrees with, but they keep just saying things like just so just heavy handed with how good of a person they are or how much they believe in this. Those are usually the people that are lying. The people that are acting like they're the biggest believers and the best person in the world. It's like I always see these things on Facebook. I just got to get on me. Oh, better not, make fun of somebody that's disabled in front of me. Okay, I'm like that. Go. What are you putting that out there? You think this is like ooh man, that's a bold. That's not going to be a popular statement. You know what I mean? Like everybody's on your side. No, don't beat up kids or women in front of other people. That's not something that's accepted. I just take it as that. It's like when it's so heavy handed with like just trying to really drive home your belief system, it usually comes with a large amount of insecurity and just insincerity as well.
Very true. And he's using that as a shield. That's a really good point, Justin.
And fuck those people too, the virtue signals. I see him. I see you.
Would y'all rather go? You want to talk about Vitzik and Olaf, the little scene there, real quick? I'll let you take it off first, Kenzie. And yeah, basically, Olaf isn't sure if they made the right decision. Are they walking to their death? Are they walking into Ragnarok?
Yeah. The fact that they were, I guess, landed on the beaches, but there was scouts is kind of a thing, or there was a landing on the beach, which we assume was Harold and Bjorn, but there were scouts. So whether they were Olaf's men or Ivar's men is yet to be like figured out. But when they do have Olaf come up to next to Vitserg, and it's kind of like, I don't know if we made the right choice. This is like if we're marching to our own deaths, and all this stuff because he does have a formidable army, and but there's just like, yeah, we're kind of doing the right thing, which comes credence to the second bit of Vitzerg's scene where once they're in the camp, basically Bjorn finds Vitzerg and it's just like, now I'm on your side. So it's like the flip flopper has now finally flipped back to Bjorn.
Classic almost. Bjorn doesn't even slightly question it, but we'll talk about that in a second. Go ahead.
But then he's go flip flopping, and who knows whether if this was part of Vitzerg's ultimate plan was to get Ivor angry at him, but then also to get Bjorn to accept him, but then to turn on him, because the seer did say that Vitzerg would do things that the brothers haven't done before. So if to play both, maybe even three brothers against him would be kind of a thing, and because from our own sort of history of his characters, there's not much written, if memory serves me correctly. So for him to like take almost over Olafson's army and put it as his own would be kind of a cool thing, even though probably the battle isn't in their favor, but just
it's a good point. I mean, I don't know, I feel like he could ultimately kill Bjorn somehow. That may be the thing that he's done that no one has ever done that has attempted it. Not a lot of people actually tried to kill Ivar if you think about it, but many people have tried to kill Bjorn. And it's
Yeah.
a good point made of that this episode. You think no one can touch you. You're blessed by the gods. You're just a man. You can bleed. I think that was accentuated for a reason. Justin, I know you got some good stuff on this too.
Yeah, I've been looking at. It was confirmed. That I was wondering it to Kenzie about the scouts. Those were Ivar scouts that were doing, they're just carrying out the master plan from Ivar because he's like, I'm such a tactical genius. Why don't you guys go look around and see if anybody's attacking us? And they're like, oh my God, never thought to do that. So, again, reinforcing that really strong situational awareness and tactical ability. But anyways, Olaf, who is based more off of, and this actually been mentioned by the creators, is actually a descendant from Harold and was somebody that didn't bring the Buddhism to the Danes or the Saxons, but brought Christianity. And this takes place about 100 some years after. But he also was a king of it's called Ring Ike or something. I can't pronounce it, but it's a municipality. Man, I butchered that.
Municipality?
Yes, municipality within Norway, and it holds a lot of prominent, militaries, fiefs, whatever. It's got a lot of freaking people. He's a powerful guy. I don't know, and I don't know how much power they're showing him to have in the series. It seems like he has a fairly large army, but the point is, what I think is going down is they are gonna have to run into a situation where Ivar is gonna have to leave Kattegat and get to England. So what is going to happen in this battle? Because you have to feel like, okay, first off, they had no idea that Bjorn was going to be sailing, and going by common sense, they probably would have figured that if even at the odd chance he was planning an attack at the same time, that they definitely wouldn't be doing it in this weather. So he shows up, but it seemed like they already had a formidable army. So these odds are so stacked against Ivar that I feel that somebody is going to have to do something that is going to be so atrocious that Ivar and even Ube and Bjorn are going to be somewhat reconnected. They're going to be brought back together by the actions of either Olaf or the actions of Harold, because Harold has to separate from them in that battle. But I don't see, this is how could they not just take this like immediately after the battle from the first half 5A? I believe like Ivar had 3,000 troops and like 2,500 of them were casualties. Like his army was mostly the Franks. So it's like
easy, right?
It should. They already thought they could do it, and now they got literally like another army and a half that's just joining them. So what is going to happen here that it is going to actually result in what I believe needs to happen, and that is the brothers coming back together for at least a moment, or at least Ivar having his downward spiral even more so, and having to find himself, like the other characters have gone through. Every other brother so far has had that to some extent, some larger than the others, of course. But yeah, I'm just trying to workshop it in my head on how Harold is going to separate himself from this situation, because something's going to happen. There's going to be some type of tomfoolery in the promotion.
There will be a parlay between someone before this battle, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit telling too that the promotion was just one single shot from the actual attack. They didn't give us anything else, so that tells me that there's, if they showed us anything else, it'd be very telling. And so it's going to have to, in my opinion, it just has to end in Ivar heading to England and having his chess match with Alfred, and that would most likely require him to have some sort of relationship that's not a total shit show with at least some of the brothers, Ube in particular, which we'll get into.
We saw Olaf's men with Bjorn it seemed like Olaf's men. What if Harold turns on? I feel like Harold could easily turn on Olaf, Bjorn, and Vitzer for just that's more of Ragnar's sons dead if he can get them dead or just defeat them. that would be beneficial to him if he could work it out. I hope they play
Yeah.
him that way.
Then the only other thing I'll rant about is that's interesting. What if Harold tries to betray them in Ivar, because Ivar is in a kind of finding either a finding Jesus moment or finding Odin moment where he's had to deal with the death of his son, which maybe he shows that he knew it wasn't his, but whatever. So he's down already. What if he does see the betrayal by Harold, and that is what could bond the brothers together? It is then him sticking with his family over that, because he's gonna learn that he needs to value them in some way, because we need to stop having the infighting with the brothers, because they need to go on their respective paths, whether they're going to stay accurate to the sagas or not. They need to still go off on their own and do what they need to do. They can't keep doing this, and Ivar needs to be in England. There's no way around it. I just don't see any other way. He needs to get there, and I think it makes a lot more sense for him to get there and forge a relationship.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
With at least, how that could happen. I have no fucking clue. Like, I don't know.
Well, one of the brothers has to die. It's seemingly set up this way. Ragnarok is a big thing about it, is brother killing brother, the gods dying. Everything ends up surviving and being rebirthed in the end. And I feel like if they're setting anyone up to die, it's Bjorn. And we may get into this later, but
Yeah.
to your point about Ivar, and we'll go straight to Kattegat, and his reasons, I think, are you can see his reasons in this episode right here. You can see the fear in his eyes and his steady downfall. Go ahead, Kenzie, and take it away for a second.
Oh yeah, with Ivar
Freydis.
and Freydis, she's figured out somehow that because she's been asking, "Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Where's my baby?" That ultimately she finds out that the baby has been murdered by fox, not murdered, but like torn apart by foxes after presumably, I guess, dying from being in the cold. And it's in this moment here with the picture that Ivar pretty much is like, "You lied to me. What else have you lied to me about?" And she's like, "I didn't lie. I haven't lied. I've never lied to you." And he doesn't kill her.
Everything was for you, Ivar.
Yeah. And he doesn't kill her in this moment, which I was kind of slightly surprised about, because as he said in his, I guess, lovely speech, I guess you could say, about what's next and what happened to the baby, that the baby died and all of that stuff. So he could have easily said, like, if say, for argument, he had stabbed her, that she had to have a procedure that ultimately made her bleed to death. So it could have been something like that. So she's now kept alive for some reason other than just a face. I know what he's gonna do.
Justin, you ready for this?
Are you gonna drop a truth bomb?
No, he's gonna sacrifice Freydis before the battle. You notice how before he said she can't bear to live without her son, and the doom on her face. I think he's gonna sacrifice her.
Yeah.
No, right?
Yeah, that could work. Another aspect of this that we have to really factor in is that Ivar's storyline has been essentially Eric Bloodaxe's storyline. As far hers is embracing different periods of the Vikings saga, and these storylines like Ube is essentially Guthrum, in my opinion, and Ivar is essentially Bloodaxe, who is just constantly fighting with all of his siblings in order to gain power. But he also has to go over and make a deal once he gets screwed over. And his wife was also a little bit of a wild card and plotting, and always trying to play games and so forth. So that actually ties right into it. So yeah, I mean, it's just how do we get to this point where we have the brothers that can somewhat be in a workable relation?
You just want brother love, man.
I just want him to stop fighting. All they do.
You see this accentuated though. Ivar walking again. That's something I noted, but it seems a little harder for him to walk now. I don't know if his disease is getting slightly worse, but it really accentuates his feeling of urgency that he needs to show power. Uh, but he's also showing weakness, and you see that that is something he doesn't want to do.
Did you see when he walked into the hall and he at the first time seemed uncomfortable? I think he's slowly coming to the realization that he sucks. Because what Mackenzie was talking about, I didn't want to interrupt because I do that enough. But did you notice that he also is now hitting women? Which, I mean, that checks all the boxes for the asshole. I mean, like, what is left for him to do that is just like the most undesirable action for one of your protagonists to do? I don't know. I still see people saying, "Oh, how's Ivar going to win?" I'm like, "Are you rooting for Ivar?" Like, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm just into that, just into him, just beating women and just killing brothers and just brutally burning people to death and so forth." But also we see how he truly feels about handicapped in the gods. Again, another example of them questioning their gods, because again, when you're backed into that corner, that's when true character comes out. And he says, no, I don't want you to go through the struggles I did. Does not make you divine. This gives you hardships. Not me, not Ivar, because I'm a Mary Sue. And everything works out for me. I guess the only thing that doesn't work out, because the only thing you could add to his checklist of just piece of shit actions would be bestiality. But, his handicap really hurts him in that area because, his penis doesn't work. So there's a lot of hurdles for him to get through. But there's a lot of unhappy goats and cattle cat that we could add in. I mean, the character's so unlikable to me. So he has to become to the realization that he is no longer accepted. And that happened with Blood Axe as well. He ruled viciously, and he ruled out of fear, and he ended up getting fucked over by his own people. So I think it's going to a T.
Yeah, you hear the rumbling when he comes in. I'll let Kenzie touch on this, but I was just going to say that I thought at a moment he had, like, when he let go of Freydis and didn't kill her, I thought that was like some kind of heartfelt moment. But no, I think he's going to sacrifice her. But go ahead, Kenzie.
Yeah, like he's choking her, but it's not hard enough where she's like losing tons of air, like she's losing consciousness. So he still has some sort of affection for her and knows that maybe she, even though he assumes that she's lying about everything, that there may be some truth to it. But I feel like, again, he's only really keeping her as a status symbol now at this point, because at the very end, when he has that rousing speech of how we must protect Kattegat and no one's ever going to take Kattegat from me or anybody else again, and that my brothers are pretty much knocking at our door and we have to be defensive. So, and he puts out his hand for her. She's reluctant, but she knows she has to do it. So now it's using her as this thing. But you also brought up when we were talking about this before, that she could also be one of the formidable players in the downfall of Ivar. Like, there could be a scene where maybe they have Fitzurg and Bjorn and maybe even Harold all in, like, I guess you would say, the throne room, and there's that decision of who gets to kill him, and whichever brother is, I guess, most worthy could kill him.
They would give Ivar a one-on-one at least. I do, but that you make some really good points there. I want to address this in the chat, Lady Dreamfire. How can you not be damaged when the only person to really love you was your mother, shunned by society and looked upon like a freak? I kind of feel sorry for him. I slightly disagree, because his brothers loved him, and they loved him his whole life. Yeah, they made fun of him, but all brothers make fun of each other, like bad, like we are mean. I have brothers, but I still love my brother. And they did love him. They did a lot for him.
I think all of the ones that are still alive, probably Sigurd was the one that was the most, like, didn't love him as much. But I see that point. Like, I see, like, all of the brothers that are still alive, loving him and, like, accepting him, but it's maybe just the one that Ivar ends up killing is the one that hated him the most.
It would be easier to feel sorry for him if he didn't feel so sorry for himself is the way. I don't say that I don't pity the man, that what he's been through isn't not awful. But yeah, take it away, Justin. I see you.
No, I really like the way you said that. Yeah, and that rings true. He is unable to ever take any blame, to take any of the responsibility that comes along with his actions. And yeah, like he says, he was treated bad. We never saw him get treated badly, other than the other brothers just kind of being weirded out about the relationship with the mom. There's a little bit of that, but it's just like, how long are you going to hold? I always say this about people that keep bringing up their childhood, and I'm not dismissing it. We all had shit happen. But it's like, man, if you're so worried about what your childhood was like, man, you must have no problems now, because it's just like, you got to move forward to a point. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I just don't think that's a great way and it's not because again, we don't need to feel sympathy for him. We should have some empathy for him. We just need to understand where he's coming from. I understand it's coming from this place of insecurity and all that, but it's like, you can only play that crap for so long before this insecurity just becomes so overwhelming that there's no coming back from it. But yeah, I think absolutely what happens with Frades is interesting as well, because how do you guys take this? Shoot it over to you. She is genuinely upset about the baby. And
It's usually me doing this, but I'll talk about a little bit. But yeah, Freitas is really upset about this baby. She is distraught in a sense that you wouldn't think she would be, but this seems like it's her future. And you cut out a little bit at the Freitas part, Justin. So
yeah,
um,
do you think she's sincere about wanting to help Ivar? And the only other point I'll put in is that, like, he is in a very, very bad situation right now, because just having that kid and having it die is going, in this time in that society, would be looked upon as the gods have cursed him. So it would not be. I mean, he couldn't be in a less just freaking total shit show as far as it goes, with this ongoing siege. But I don't know how many people he can muster. Those people didn't like him before, so I just don't see how he's going to hold this. How he's going to hold Kattegat. But I know everybody's showing their true feelings, I guess. She really did love the kid, or at least didn't want to kill the kid. And my question is, does she love Ivar at all, or just loves the idea of being a queen?
To your point about Ivar with the baby, yeah, you could see that, right? He didn't want to do it. It didn't seem like he really wanted to do it, and he felt like he was actually giving that baby a mercy, or at least that's what he felt like. That's the first time we've seen any real emotion from Ivar, in my opinion. And then to Freitas, it's a good question, Justin, because right up until she's about to die or pass out from asphyxiation, she says she did it for him, that she loved him, but she also didn't tell him it wasn't his child either. So I don't believe her. She is a schemer, and the way she looked at him after he let her go, it's hard to say. I feel like she was in love with the idea of what Ivar could be or is, not Ivar himself. Wasn't real love. That's my
Yeah.
opinion.
What do you guys think? Go to Mackenzie first, just because I feel bad I keep jumping in here. But just one last little aspect of this is, what do we feel about Ivar mentioning that it wasn't his kid? Do you think that's more out of, he's just trying to, again, not assign guilt to himself, and he feels better if he goes along with that narrative on this story? That's beneficial for him. He just got a baby eaten by foxes or something, so it's in his best interest to say, hey, not my kid, even though, hey, it's still illegal, not a cool thing to do. Do you think that this is something he's always felt like we were hoping for? Mackenzie, we were talking about, is he just the smartest guy or the dumbest guy in the world? Or is this just something that he's using as a coping mechanism?
I feel like the whole Ivar and the baby thing, this whole obviously storyline wouldn't have happened if the baby had nothing wrong with them. He wouldn't be questioning if it was his or not. I think he's because the fact that she is a fully able-bodied woman, and he just happens to be like that. He's like questioning about the deformity, It almost is like, because he kind of knows that he's never been able to have children because the brothers did talk about it when they all, like, what was it, season 4, when they all tried to sleep with Margaret at one point, that he obviously couldn't do what he needed to do. So it's him trying to do that. But I do feel like he kind of does have this association with the fact that he thinks it could be his child. And it's just the easy thing to do is just to sort of think that it's not his, or the fact that it was almost that whole thing of it's God's will that this had happened, so that potentially when the army comes, that he doesn't have to worry really about a newborn baby in the midst, being like potentially attacked. Especially, what are they going to do with Frades when those two, technically 3 armies, um, show up, and it's one of those things where it's just kind of, I don't know. But I feel like she truly loved that child. Like, even Ivor says, it's like when a mother goes through that loss of not only just a child, but a child that they carried inside them for so long. He's sort of sympathetic to it, but you can also see that it's slightly manic, that he's just like, well, this had happened, and I feel really sorry about it, when we all know the truth, that it was just like, because I think he plays it off, it was just like a cold or something that had killed the baby, and not the fact that he just like threw the baby into the woods and was like, here, son, let's play games.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the baby did die from the cold before it got torn apart by
yeah,
foxes.
yeah. I think because it probably would have only had just a blanket.
I feel like the baby was almost a means to an end to her, but I know she loved it. But what type of love? I don't know. It seems like Freydis isn't capable of actual love, and some people aren't, and not aren't evil like her. But some people just aren't really capable of having that connection with someone. And then where you have Ivar, who seems to be searching for his mother his whole life. Um,
Freud.
yeah, he is. This is what they made him into, but it's. I hope right now he's gonna turn. He's not the sucker for love anymore. He's gonna instantly be as smart and quick as he was back when we first met him, and in history, this tactician, he had his lapse in naivety. He is a young man, a very young man. This is his first instance with probably actual love, and yeah, I don't think he'll ever let it get in his way again. I do think she will be sacrificed for morality,
But
and also, he's gonna pull some political stuff. I hope.
or what if it's a thing? It's like it may not happen before um, the battle, but it may be a thing of. I think you said maybe what if she tries to, when we were talking about it before. What if she tries to like ultimately kill herself? Um, it could be a thing of something happens during that battle where somebody, even though this is really bad that I'm saying this, but like something happens during the battle where a few people from either army get in. They know that Ivor loves, or quote unquote loves, Frades, and is like easy target, and then they try to do something to her, either take her out in terms of just like taking her out, like killing her, or they take her as prisoner, or they just leave her, but they do vile things to her, like rape her or something like that. It could be something where it's like to get Ivor even more angry at them. I wouldn't necessarily think like the brothers would do it, but I would just assume some malicious part of either army would
Do you
have that
think Ivar
happen.
still loves her?
No, it's just the fact
I'm
that
just
it's on
asking.
from the outside perspective, like the people in the throne room, I guess you could call it, assume that he still likes her. So if it's even on the outside, like that they're strong parents, even though like they just lost a baby, kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know, but I feel like something will happen to her character that either she'll be taken out, maybe by sacrifice, but I feel like they gotta show again maybe some brutality of war that's not just the war itself, like what happens to the people in, like, the more vulnerable people in this.
Yeah, do you see Ivar giving her an opportunity to double cross him, Justin?
Ivar giving who an opportunity?
Freydis, after what she did, after everything that's happened, do you think he's still gonna be unwary enough to give her an opportunity to basically stab him in the back?
Yeah, she's still by his side, so that right there tells me that he is, and I think it more so than love, and again, it's just opinion, and what I get from it is just the idea that somebody was cared about. It's more the idea of just being embraced by someone, even though of his downfall, his handicap and so forth. That was what enticed him so much. But I don't. I don't see her dying in the back, even though what Mackenzie says is like historically very accurate. It's horrid what happens to the women and children and even the men in castles that because remember, castles had like cities in them most of the time as well. So everything from the Crusades and so forth, what Mackenzie's talking about was a real reality. I just don't see that going down in the show. But I do see possibility of either Ivar sacrificing her going out and doing something stupid that does get her killed, because I don't really see her going to England, and I do believe that Ivar has to go there. There's just no way he doesn't. So I don't know what help she could be, in that situation. So it's
Yeah,
just
he's keeping her for appearance's sake right now. The baby
yeah.
just died. If she dies too, he has all this stuff he has to deal with. So the easiest way, like I said, is sacrifice. But other things could happen. I'm not a writer. I don't pretend to be. I'm just a fan who likes to talk about it. So, uh, any more thoughts on Kattegat, and then we'll talk all things Wessex and ooh bah, ooh bah. So,
Just the to look up the real life Olaf and see what he did, and some of his actions do resemble what he's doing right now. And you brought up earlier that there's a chance that he's having second doubts. I think that he's been kind of cryptic in everything he's done. I think he's more testing Vitsek's like ideals and like his philosophy on life. Because he's like, "Ooh, we could be walking towards our death," and he's like, just by the way he's examining him after he's posing questions, he wants to see what Vitsek's way of thinking is. It seems like he's very much so, I'm going to say aroused by that, but interested, maybe aroused. So it's an interesting take on it. And also remember that this is actually a grandson of King Harold. So in
yeah,
real life. So
he's. Oh, go ahead.
no, that's going to say there's the possibility that Harold and Olaf align, and that would put the numbers against Bjorn, who would be with Vitshek at that point, and that might actually be a way to get to the ending I'm trying to get to, meaning the brothers have to fight together. If Olaf takes his army, because it's not Vitshek's army, combines it with Harold's men, the ones that Bjorn hasn't killed, they would have overwhelming forces against them, and all their backs be against the wall. So maybe that's the way to do it. So if that happens, I'm gonna make sure to save this clip. But yeah,
I mean, he's to your point. He's trying to punch holes in his faith the whole time, or he's like, you don't understand fate. Apparently, so Witzer is staying strong in his convictions. Seems sure of himself for the first time ever. Right? This is the culmination and the peak of what is Witzer at this point. Now, does that mean he may die? Maybe. I do feel like one of the brothers are gonna die. We can talk about that in a minute, though, if you want.
yeah, I just
Um,
I think no way. But
They need a shaka. But yeah, I know you think no way. So Wessex, Judas' last breath. Little short, I have to say. The actual last breath on the acting was pretty eerie. Um,
well, your last breaths are technically short breaths, aren't they?
yes,
Haha,
yes, she
that
did.
joke. That
She
joke.
she did it really well. But they really made it quick, right? They didn't give us much here. Lagatha like steps in as well, stepmom. Get it, steps in, and she basically says how great Judith is, and everything Judith does is the reason he's there. So now be a great king. And there we get mentioned, Alfred the Great in history. So I thought that was a little forced, but interesting. We get Lagatha's flashback, and then we get her waking up and the symbolism of cutting her hair, which I think is something we talked about last week. And yeah, just a symbolism of the old life being shed away, basically. And I guess we'll just get into that part, and then we'll get into the one-on-one home gang. So, Kenzie first on this one. You got the good picks there.
Yeah. I was surprised that they had killed off Judith so quickly after the last episode. I would have probably assumed that this would have happened. Yes, this would have happened maybe this episode, but we would have had a scene where she probably was deteriorating more, just to give it more of a like a last scene for her besides going and then dying. Because Judith is a very epic character for what she was and what she is. And obviously for Alfred, this is going to be really the motivation, I guess, that keeps him going. Because now he has lost everybody, minus Elswith. And it's going to be hard for him, but Lagatha did tell him you have to
Burns
be Alfred.
bastard seeds inside of her.
You have to be Alfred, and your mother's did her life's work was to see you on the throne. So you have to be Alfred. And then she mentions the Great, and which is historically what happens. He becomes Alfred the Great. But yeah, it's kind of a sad theme because we lose another pretty epic as she was an adult in the beginning of the show, an adult character. And yeah, it's sad. And for Elswith, it's losing her mother-in-law, someone who she probably was a vital resource for her. Because we did see them bond very quickly and very well, even though they were cousins beforehand. But yeah.
Yeah, and best crazy eyes in the business also, right, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, Katy Perry's got some pretty crazy eyes too. If the whites, it's always a rule of thumb for you guys out there. If a potential female that you're looking, a maiden that you're looking to court has, just you can see the whole whites around her eyes at all times, and just that's a sure sign of craziness. But I feel that yeah, obviously Judith deserved a little better, but this is again an example of having three-dimensional characters. Give one-dimensional characters plot progression and so forth, and they kind of switched it around with all these characters, meaning you're adding layers by taking layers away from your other protagonists and so forth. We needed her to die, and I mean, obviously I'm not a physician. Well, maybe it's not that obvious. Maybe somebody thought I was a doctor. But yeah, she had breast cancer one day, and like Mackenzie said, and she did her like the cough of death, and she was done. But it needed to push the narrative forward. She had, like we predicted, Lagatha would find strength, and when Judith was weak, it just like Judith kind of found strength through her. They're kind of kismet and all that. But Michael Hurst does do one thing beautiful, and he didn't do it here. Is disappointed. I did a mashup video with how he handles his protagonist's deaths, and it's always with a really nice thematic score, and it's always got usually a white horse symbolism, and there's like visions of their past. So I would have liked to see something like that, but like her painting the illuminations, her like finding her way. I mean, she was up until this last season before she became just a mad woman, and again, if I was Alfred, I'd be like, she's like, oh, I did all this for you and all this, but you have just made my rule so unstable. You're the definition of just fucking shit up for these last few months. You have made this far harder on me than it needed to be. But Judith, I really loved this character, and I thought, yeah, they should have done more with it. And it's like you got to rush to one end so you can continue the other characters' story. Just like Lagatha had to disappear so Bjorn could go do something else, and that's where you get this but it's an ensemble. It's hard to deal with, and there's stuff that's supposed to be happening all around the world and in different time periods technically, so it's a little tough. But yeah, I mean, she deserved a little bit more, and I thought it was a sad to see her go, but she doesn't service the story anymore, so it is what it is.
So we got something in the chat, something I was wondering on the rewatch, something Kenzie was wondering on the rewatch, and it's the time lapse. Now, they had the home gang, which is Uba and King Frodo. You can give them 3 to 7 days. You have there's usually a small waiting period before you do the fight. So, but could have took Uba a couple days to get there. So I'll give them a week or 2 weeks. By the time they get back, Elsa seems a month or two more pregnant, and Judith is dead. But to Lady Dreamfire's point, Uba's face is just as messed up as usual. I don't know. It seemed a little weird, like the time mashup, but could just be looking at stuff too much. But the baby bump grew significantly.
Yeah, you got a question. I mean, if you want to talk about travel time, it's worse than Thrones, so I just don't even do it. But there's issues. I mean, look at how much the other sons of Ragnar have aged, meaning they haven't, in between the time that Magnus went from a child to into his at least being 20. So it's like technically right now, when the heathen army first attacked, Uba was in the show. They have him listed as being born in 795 on Wikipedia, which is obviously the best place to go. It has him at 810. That was an 865. So like we're looking at a 55 to 65-year-old man we're supposed to be looking at. So it's even within their own lore. Let me remind you, this isn't just me being like, oh, in history it would have been this. No. This is there's a website. I'll give you guys the link where you can look at the aging progression throughout the seasons of the kids. So I mean, it stays static for some people and goes for others. It looked like she got slightly younger. So yeah, I wish I would have seen more out of it. But again, like Alfred needs to be on his own now, and we need to see that whole, we'll get to it, but the Christmas raid in him retreating to the marshes, which I'm not sure if we'll get or not, but I need to see that chess match with him and Ivar that isn't a horrific person, an Ivar that might have learned a little something on his way. So that's about it, really. Yeah, but I mean, don't think about the time. You just
I don't think they'll bring Scotland and stuff in what Ivar did. He invaded Ireland and Scotland as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he could have very well been from Ireland. And then but I don't think they're gonna do that either. Yeah, I agree.
I can see them playing that out for sure. I know you hated the time lapse. I couldn't give you a good enough answer, so I just had to deal with you complaining about it.
But yeah, because before, she could have been like hiding this bump for like at least a month, because she was probably still wearing her corset or something, and suppressing it down a little bit. But now it's kind of out there in the open. It's too big now to hide. But surprisingly, we didn't get a scene with her did she ever tell him that she was pregnant?
No, it was just Judith noticing the way she was holding her hands on her little baby bump. Was it last episode? Because it seems like
2 episodes ago.
2 episodes ago, she was about 3 months pregnant.
Now it looks like she's about 6. But I'm surprised they didn't get a scene where Alfred is reacts to the fact that she is pregnant, even though because that would have been an interesting scene, because he'd have to play the math in his head, almost, in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's to Justin's point, they're fast tracking it slightly.
Yeah.
They aren't accentuating it enough as you think they would. So yeah, that's a good point.
A lot of veterans came home from war, sadly, in the past. They have newborn sons or daughters, and they refuse to do the math on that because it didn't work out. So it could be a case of that,
It would have been nice to have yes, I'm coming from the female's perspective. It would have been a nice scene for him to realize that he has in this moment of darkness with losing his mother being sick and all this stuff, losing his brother, that there's something positive to look forward into, besides Uba and the Saxon, not the Saxons, Ubin and the Danish army winning, is the fact that he's going to be a father, or supposedly a father.
Yeah,
the paternity test. Oh, go ahead.
So yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. So Mackenzie saying, I mean, having an heir And I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be a womanizer or anything, but I mean, in this period, that was their job. Like they needed, that was like their job. Look at Henry VIII, he pretty much beheaded 2 women for not doing that the way he wanted. So it was very, very important. And also, yeah, it would have been kind of the idea: a star must die for another star to be born. The end of one cycle of life, and wash and rinse and have the cycle begin again with the rebirth. So yeah, I think that they missed out on a lot of good opportunities there. Good thoughts on that, Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Very good points. The paternity test is really easy though. If the baby has blonde hair and blue eyes, we know it's Bjorn.
He's like Genghis Khan, man. Everybody's his kid. Everybody's got a little Bjorn in him.
Yeah, a little captain. So if you want to,
the rest of the, because I think it's like the rest of the Wessex stuff happened after Ube and Torby come back. So if we want to talk about the fight,
we can talk about the fight real quick. Yeah. Yep. Basically, they don't call it home gang, but it's basically home gang. They set up the rules. I loved how you get 2 shields, the conditions and terms. It was fairly accurate. I wouldn't say it was perfect, but it was good. And I honestly love the fight choreography because it was sloppy, because it was dirty, because it would be that way in real life. It would not look pretty. It's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. People are going to be struggling for their lives. And I really did like that about this. I hate that we got a preview of it. But other than that, the fight lived up to my expectations. And when Uba called out to the Allfather at the end, I mean, that gave me a little goosebumps. I'm getting them now thinking about it. This right here, I'm glad Uba is not going Christian like I thought he was. I'm glad he come back to his gods, like we'll talk about in a bit. But, man, that was a primal battle. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you have some combat sports in your background as well. I was a boxer. That's, so give me a little bit of credit here. I had a lot of blows to the head, but what Johnny just said is, that's exactly what I picked up on it. Not only was it brutal, meaning like it was like because when you fight, and especially in a fight like that, you're going to be tooth and nail trying to do anything you can. But even did you see Frodo's punch? He punched, I boxed and I also was a DJ in clubs for 10 years. And so you see a lot of douchebags fight. A lot of men, they swing like this. And his punch was thrown. And I loved it because I hate it when I see people perfectly connecting with a right hook, pivoting and doing like, the shit that took me years and years, to learn to do an action.
Man.
No. This is what happens in fights. They're sloppy. They don't look great. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's winging his arm out there. He's windmilling it. He's hitting in a very ineffective way, but it's just like he's also pretty messed up. And also, you don't got guys that are going to be like just skilled and well versed in every area of martial arts and just ways to murder people. It's not like, oh, I'm also a perfect like Bjorn is like half a WWE wrestler, half a UFC fighter. I mean, he does like flips and stuff. He did a double drop kick in a battle before, and I was like, what, did he just do that? Like, you can't do things where you're gonna end up on the ground.
Bjorn Ironsides. Oh
yeah, he double drop kicked some guy. It's like, you have an axe, put the axe in his head. Don't do that crap, but it's ridiculous. So yeah, I liked it. It was primal. I liked that Torvi got her little moment, where she just speared that motherfucker through the back like a boss. And what's his name? The other Dane was pretty much like, it's cool. So yeah, it was good. It was, remember we were discussing whether or not this would strengthen his Christian beliefs and potentially have more converts. And I ended up being wrong on that. Because he's attributing this win to the gods that he prayed to at the moment. But we won't get into the big argument for that. If he was Muslim, he would be praying Allah, and then he'd be more of a fervent believer. So it is what it is. But it's an interesting take they took, and I'll let Mackenzie get in on it. But it definitely has some worrisome foreshadowing for him and his relationship with Alfred, if he's being a little bit of a sneaky sneak. So we'll find out. And I hope, do you guys, my last question to you, do you think that he was implying to Torvi that he had never believed in the Christian gods and that it was all like a ruse, because I don't like that, because that's not how it was conveyed, and that like it seemed like he definitely was having a connection for a little bit, and this was his epiphany. This was his turning point.
No. He waited for it to speak to him. It never spoke to him. He kind of insinuated that he never got. He tried to accept it, but the God speaks to everyone else, but not me. I think it's something around about what he said. That's all I'll say on it. Go ahead, Kenzie. Sorry.
Yeah, for the fight itself, it's pretty dramatic, but if we had only just seen, like, I want to challenge you.
Hold on. Hashtag Odin Epiphany, Lady Dreamfire. I had to throw that out there.
Odin Epiphany. But, like, if we had that whole thing of, like, I want to challenge you to single combat, and then the clip of, like, him just falling to the ground and not show, like, the actual fighting, it would have been more dramatic, and we would have been more, like, shocked about what happened. But obviously coming from a background of not knowing how to properly fight, even if it's staged or not, it was pretty well done. At some point you're just like, come on, like, we know how this happens, but it's like, come on, you kind of dragged it a little bit too long. And yeah, Torvi tries to, like, not obviously intervene, but it's after when obviously King Frodo was stabbed that one guy's like, let me see if I can break from the sacred, was it the sacred circle or something? And
Square or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it is. And she, like, shivs him in the back. And then there was one of them that tried to put a knife to her throat, but it's like, nah, okay. And then obviously Uba's declared the winner, and they all just go, Uba, Uba. It's like better than, like, what is it, a longer name where they'd have to just be like something long and stop long.
Gothram. Yeah, it doesn't have the same ring to it.
That's why Rudy works so good. Rudy. Yeah, that's why it works.
Yeah, or John had said at one point, it's like a bunch of drunk people trying to call for their Uber. It's like, Uber, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, the fight seems pretty well done, and then you just see the damage that it caused his face, and you're just like, damn it. But it reminiscent again of Ragnar when he had his face beaten up.
He looked just like Ragnar almost, didn't he?
Before he's like, where I called the Valkyries to summon me home, like that whole.
Yeah, I love that.
That look that he had on his face.
Yeah, he's gonna be the one to realize Ragnar's dream, probably. That's kind of what we're seeing here, and I'll get a little bit more into it. Mm-hmm. Uba gets brought back in bed. And to your point, Justin Torvey, oh my gosh, she is a boss. I love that part. She was just like, oh hell no. She just stabbed him like, what? And yeah, she's got her man's back no matter what. She is the epitome of a shield maiden. I'll leave it there. We'll go a little bit back. So she meets Lagatha. Then the Danes get East Anglia, if I'm not mistaken. Is that where they're at? Get a section of East Anglia. Then Lagatha gives this whole speech about, do you see this? Do you see our dream? I think that's very foretelling, especially when we're talking about where they were going when they were leaving Wessex. And yeah, I'll leave it at there because we got another part. So, Kenzie, you go ahead and go first.
Yeah, because they return from the Danish, I guess, one-on-one battle, and Alfred and Elspeth greet them, and Alfred immediately is like, we're gonna bring him to my chambers and we'll take care of him. And then out of the not out of the shadows, but kind of out of the shadows appears Lagatha, and she says, well, it takes a lot more to kill me, to Torbury, so there's probably something that'll happen where she dies, or she just ends up living, and all that. But it's nice to have the two of them reunited. I'm surprised no one was like,
his old man.
Yeah. I'm surprised that, like, no one's tried to send, not like send an emissary or something to Bjorn to say that his mother is alive, because that was a whole thing for like one to two episodes. He was like, "Where's my mom? Where's my mom?" And then now that she's like alive and she's safe relatively, that's a whole thing. But yeah, it's Uba questioning his faith, or not questioning anymore. It's like more solidifying his faith in the fact that he views the Christian cross as more of an ornament or an accessory rather than the symbolization. And when they do, my only quip on when they get to East Anglia is like, Torvi should have been, "Where's my kids?" But they were probably, but then I realized later on is that they were obviously with in Wessex, because there's a scene of Uba picking up a small girl, which is the daughter. So I was wrong, but anyway.
Yeah, Bjorn seedlings everywhere. Justin.
Yeah, the East Anglia stuff, like, this is where I'm going to come in. I think that you're really going to want to look at Uba, at least in my opinion, as Guthrum. And Guthrum was the one that made the pact with Alfred. They were in all of the battles that we just saw. The last one, Martin, that ended up, or Morton, that ended up with the death of Heckman, and then the eventual death of Aethel Red. But that was all Uba and Guthrum. But Guthrum's the one that got baptized, made the deal for East Anglia with Alfred, and he got baptized, did all that. But then what I'm worried about is I don't think it would be in Uba's character to turn on Alfred unless Alfred does something like just some atrocious action. So like, I don't want him to be scheming, because in the real history, what happens is Christmas Day, Guthrum goes and attacks is it Kensington, wherever the palace is there in Wessex, but they attack on Christmas Day, and that leads Alfred into the marshes of Somerset, and he has to hide out. Then he starts to like utilize guerrilla warfare, and that's when Alfred kind of has like his big comeback in history. So like, I think that the reason I'm so adamant about Ivar, and at least getting along with some of the brothers, is
Because you don't like him.
I don't like him, but I feel we could like him if he has some humbling moments and is acknowledging his faults. And not everybody's just not the world against him, blah, blah, blah. But I think that a perfect scene would be Ivar busting in, kicking down the doors, because again, now his legs work, of the chapel during Christmas Day and doing that. I mean, it was an epic event. I don't know if they're going to portray that. Last Kingdom did it really well, and they did show them hiding out in some marshes when Athelwolf was still alive. So I don't know if that was supposed to like be that little moment, but I don't know if he is going to now. What reason does he have to be disloyal to Alfred? Alfred is the one that actually has kept his word. He's helped them. Like they're kismet, man. Like, it just doesn't make sense, at least right now, for him to be plotting. And I'm kind of worried that he is plotting, because again, Uba is my favorite. Like, I'm actually invested in him. He's a real person. His decisions make sense. I understand what he wants. So unless something goes down like that Alfred does and dirty bitches him real bad, I hope he's not going to do what Guthrum did. And because Ube's actual history is just very cut and dry. It's just there with Guthrum for the most part, and then just eventually gets killed in a battle. He doesn't have a lot of watershed moments in history that are attributed to him. So
it only takes a small incident, like we've seen what happened. I mean, I know Egbert took back the land from Lagatha and them, but it only takes some lord that's pissed off to go there with a raiding party and mess it up to start a war, kill the wrong person, kill Uba's kid, and then just not. Alfred didn't have to do it, but if it's one of Alfred's people, I could see that pulling him in. But I think they're going to go with this religion thing. I think he's going to be pushed to try to make all the Danes Christians, and Uba's going to rebel against this. This is what I see.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the real history, it's just it is the opposite of that. Not saying that's wrong. It's probably going to be ring true for the series, the way you put it. But in real history, Guthrum is approached by some members of Alfred's court that convince him to go and flip the switch on Alfred and dirty bitch him. So it'd be interesting because they kind of, and again, another reason for why they did all that with Athelred and then didn't follow through, because then that would be something that could still be utilized, and you could again just have empathy for the characters, because at least you understand where they're coming from and so forth. But it'll be very, very interesting to see how this goes down, because he's the de facto Guthrum. He's the one that was willing to make peace, but then he ends up messing it all up as well. But it's a huge jump right now. Like if we go by the battle in which Heckman died, Hell, episode 15, that's that's 871, I believe. And then what we're seeing right now is like events that happened like 8 years later. So not that again we have to adhere to that, but I just don't know if they're gonna skip that marsh. And I want to know in the chat too if you guys think they are. That's a big moment for me in history. Like that's like
The
the
history was
famous
fine.
telling. Yeah. It's just a cool moment where he it's like he has to start resorting to these guerrilla tactics, and he's got his back against the wall. He's no longer the king. He's the king in name, but nothing else. He's hiding on marshes.
Did we see that kind of when he was a child?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Being an
worried
Apple
about.
fan, that's the thing. That's the only thing that sticks in my mind that would say he's not going to do that. But
It's just a setting, but it's still that's my exact concern as well. Is if they feel like, why did they have them hiding in marshes? Maybe they just wanted to adhere to that a little bit. And I find it hard to believe that Michael Hurst, even though he says he doesn't watch these other shows. Bullshit. I don't watch any other YouTubers ever either. I promise. No, fuck that.
Kenzie?
Yeah, this whole like collection thing of how we have history and how it's not in the proper timelines and all of this stuff is like what we've been talking, like how we're not supposed to like see certain things until later, but it's like trying to get certain things going when but the thing is, she calls to Ragnar like when she's like holding the soil, which is like what, when they get East Anglia, which is like episode 16 or something like that, after the battle, and Uba does the same thing with the soil, so it's like that's a little funny, but I don't know. But yeah, the other part of Lagatha's storyline for this episode is when she has that whole religious journey within herself. If we wanted to talk about that, because we kind of jumped that, which is like how we see how she got to where she was last episode, in like a flashback, which is kind
okay. So it's a wood witch or a pagan priestess, but I get confused because it seemed like she said something about Christ in the hut. I can't remember exactly. It's confusing.
Okay.
It doesn't give you a lot of answers as to what happened to Lagatha. It's just like, oh, she was found by some crazy woman, not a crazy woman, just some old woman, and fixed, and her hair was cut. I feel like we may get more flashbacks, but if we don't, I'm like, what the hell? I don't know how to interpret that really, besides just some lame, this person saved you.
Well, it just really comes down to we have to find out where Lagatha was for this time, right? Because that's something that we're left to wonder. So if you have her just show up in just a regular like place that she's getting regular care in, it's like, oh, she just went somewhere else. That there she is. It's not as interesting. And I don't think there's any belief system established for the very poor bedside manner of that woman, but I think they needed her to utter that line about the rebirth, and that was about it. And it's a weird place to be. Like, oh, where did they find her? It's a weird place. Like, what's up with that? They're like, well, we didn't want her just to be in like a regular shack getting cared for because it's just too simple. So it's just adding that thematic aspect to it. I don't think it'll come up again. For all we know, she's an atheist. But
well, it's confusing. Where the hell? What? Why was she running? What the hell was she running from? And then it's confusing. If they Yeah, I don't think.
They
I don't know.
needed
I think
her
we're
to go
gonna see.
away.
I think we're gonna see the journey of her death. I don't think she'll make it to Kattegat. If she does, I do think her last saving grace will maybe to save Bjorn
Yeah,
somehow.
for my. But
Um,
then it's yeah, because yeah, that's
she could
true. Because
offer her place for Bjorn if somehow Ivar
that
captures Bjorn.
that could be a thing of Lagatha securing Bjorn's safety in a sense, kind of like how um, Judith did that for Alfred, even though of course there's that significant, well, a slight significant age difference in the fact of um, Bjorn is a grown adult man and Alfred's still what, late teenager, early 20s maybe at this point, compared to Bjorn. But that could be a thing that is a parallel because, like I said, did say we have stuff to see behind the shield wall or something to Judith. So I don't know.
Yeah, Alfred's a monarch though, and Bjorn is, he's like a wanderlust warrior looking for fame and glory though. So it's I don't
And
I do see what you're saying with the mirroring effect and all that. Definitely could happen. I just lean more towards her new life is just embracing what Ragnar and her originally wanted. She was part of that farming process. That's when she was hooking up with Egbert. But so that is the life. I feel like that's the home because they were creating a new home for them, a better place with soil that grows things that are freaking edible and so forth. So I see it going there. We got to have a meetup one more time. It could go anyway. But yeah, she doesn't need to be as much. And like you said, because of what should be an age difference, what looks like one is 20 and Bjorn's just a filthy 30-year-old.
Home.
So
Go ahead and get into that. That's pretty much going to be the settlement. You think that's where they're going?
what
More
the
than likely, they're going to the
East
settlement.
Anglia?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I don't think they're going to home. I think that they're going to the settlement. Because we can't have them leave. Like they need to have a presence in England, and there needs to be a reason for the other brothers to come to England. We constantly see this. I mean, Hedman's whole freaking story thread was all just so he could have they could have a reason to get to England. We see this again. You have to utilize some characters as plot devices. Just objectify the shit out of them. Like, you are pretty much a boat ticket. So yeah, it is what it is. I really like the idea. I think it's sentimental, and I love them picking up that dirt and that soil. That's goal. They do want to be. They were farmers and so forth. So.
Well, what if Bjorn lives? Let's put this out there. Could he be the one to stir up trouble instead of Ivar? I know you're thinking Ivar or Uba. I do want Bjorn to go on like this final voyage of adventure in the last season, but I fear they may kill him off with all his dialogue being just barely minimal at this point. I'm super confused by it.
If you apply that to everybody, though, everybody's freaking dead. He's been pretty heavy. What is the old saying? It's if you're writing the story, if you're writing the exact story you're telling, then you're doing it wrong, meaning like you have to have some nuance, a little bit of poetry in you can't just be like, now we need to get on the boat to go to the England, I mean, like, or I am a pagan, I do not believe in this, or Headman yelling about how
There's a
passionate he is about
mountain.
God. Yeah, there's mountain, you know what I mean? Like, it's on the nose writing with her sometimes. It's a little weird, but yeah, I mean, I see, if I had to predict, Wanderlust ending for him, seeing him sailing into the Mediterranean, because I just look at what their goals are, and that was his goal. Right now, he's got some vengeance, and they need to utilize this last fight for Kattegat, hopefully, and utilize it in a way that sets them all up on a better path. Vitchek as well, going a little bit more, like Wanderlust, and then Ivar and Uba being a little bit more like, not that one's more significant than the other, but more like straightforward, approach. So like what they like, Ivar is gonna have that chess match with Alfred. Yeah, I mean, it's Chekhov's gun. You take a gun out in the first act, second act you put it on the shelf. If it doesn't fire by the third act, you never should have fucking introduced it. So it's like how many it's been brought up. Yeah. So That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I've,
And
mm,
go ahead.
yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go with that. I feel like Bjorn. I don't know. It can be confusing at times, but
Yeah,
like you were
there's
saying last week, Kattegat. What's the point? Like, why don't they just make a settlement a few miles down the road and say, "I'm king"? What's to stop? Like, what's so special about Kattegat at this point? What is Bjorn even going there for? There's
yeah,
nothing there for him. Nothing.
it's
Yeah.
Yeah, it
maybe
makes
so,
no sense.
well, it can't be any women because he's married now to the woman he's truly loved. But who knows? That may end in 5 seconds from now. But probably it's because has that, I guess, I'm the oldest mentality and I deserve it because I'm the oldest and all of this stupid like that. Like continue to play with that instead of like the whole thing with Stannis and being the middle child and how he wanted to do all of that stuff. So it's like I'm the oldest, so I deserve it. Um, my younger crippled brother doesn't deserve it more than I do, and all of that because I'm supposed to be like Ragnar. But it seems like Uba's kind of fulfilled the whole stuff with Ragnar. Um,
He doesn't want to be king, though, right?
Yeah.
he wants to just conquer, but Aegon to conquer.
In the Viking or the Danish culture at that time, we have to realize that they do the show, not to be nitpicking, but the chieftains and the jarls and everybody are depicted in a way that is not authentic whatsoever. Jarls were not treated like they show, especially in the first few seasons. So this is me nitpicking about the first one. They didn't have this pyramid of power like they they weren't treated like some king. They were more amongst the people, so forth. They didn't get all the special treatment and dictate everything. But I mean, I think that like Bjorn's looking for fame. Uba's looking to fulfill what his father, like it's just getting it in your own right. Like, what do they consider to be, what is a fruitful life? What is a life with meaning? Like, it's all those philosophical questions of, what do you go and take care of your mother, your sick mother for the last years of her life? Or do you go off and fight in a war that, you have whatever a belief that is a good fight, blah blah blah. What person made the right decision or be more impactful? It's like you have to assign your own meaning to life and do it. I think Bjorn is the wanderlust, and Vitchek seems to be that way too. Uba is more cold and calculated and a little bit more structured. I mean, he's taking care of everybody's kids and crap. He's the only person that can keep a woman that isn't beating him. And it makes a little bit of sense for that to happen, because then you have a situation where Harold can take the land that he's supposed to be taking to. If you get Bjorn out of the picture from Scandinavia, as well as the Vitchek and all them, you can have a little bit of historical accuracy in a thematic, in an entertaining way. So
You have a slot for the King of Iceland as well, if you think about this. Possibly.
You do.
Someone's got to land there. Unless Floki's just going to slowly die over the cave while he's seeing all these events unfold. Because did you notice how it showed him looking like he was looking at something in the cave and everything was stopped in Wessex when Judas was died? That was a pretty cool scene. I don't know what he's going to do, but I do think he's going to live. They're not going to make him go through all this to not. It has to culminate in something. And I just hope it's good and that they can make it believable and not drag it out too much. I would be fine with not seeing Floki for a while. Not that I don't want to see Floki, but I think it calls for a blackout of him for a few episodes, I would say.
If you're going down the sea route, you almost have to. You can't. Tolkien was really good at doing this. You never understand, and he never shows you the details or the minutia of like the way the wizards or any of the magical aspects work. Same with the Song of Ice and Fire, because if you learn all the details behind the mystical and magical aspects, they aren't mystical and magical anymore. So you just essentially can't show it, else it doesn't work. Unless you're going to try to take a minimalist approach or a practical approach to how becoming a seer goes. It's like, well, for step one, do 30 sit-ups a day and then boil your face a little bit or something. I don't know what it takes to do. So it's better that we don't know.
I honestly loved how they did it, though. Whether he was actually found a ruin of something from the I don't know. The Templars aren't even around yet. So, anyways, if he found a ruin or this was actual a vision for him, either way, I loved how they shot this. They could have did it in one quick scene. I don't necessarily like how a couple of quick scenes. Instead, they spread it out through like 7 or 8 little bitty scenes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Other than that, I actually this was probably my favorite Iceland moment for the longest time, I would say. Besides him seeing the Valkyries in the waterfall, I thought that was pretty cool. Other than that, there's not much going on there.
It embraces his journey. This is a fitting end. It fits in all ways. It was a failure on all accounts, like I said, and it's a fitting end. His spirituality is being questioned at the highest level, and it's, the gods are taunting him. Does he take this as a trial and he becomes more powerful because of it, or does he finally succumb to just the fact that he's just never going to be set on a clear path as far as his paganism goes, and his very fervent way of believing. He is he's your just crazy preacher type, the guy that just like gets like the snakes out and just starts screaming during mass. He's a different type of religious. He's above and beyond.
Some funny stuff I could say. I'd probably get in trouble though. So with that's a really good point. Final thoughts on the episode. I guess predictions if you want to do them. You can do whatever kind of predictions you want. And if you'd like to rate it, you can. If you don't like doing that stuff, that's fine too. I know it offends you, Justin.
Why do you keep saying that? I don't.
I like messing with you.
That makes sense.
My Twitter son, if you haven't seen that, it's pretty hilarious. Mackenzie, I'll let you go first with your final thoughts, rankings, and predictions if you have any. And listen to Mackenzie; she usually is on the money with this.
They did have they did put out like this typical promo for this besides the extended scene. So there is a shot of Bjorn sort of falling to the ground. It did look extra bloody, so it could be a thing of he becomes gravely injured. And we're left on that for that could be one of the things that we're left on is what's Bjorn's fate? They also did play on the fact that Ivar now wants to be using fire as one of his, one of his tactics because he has probably less than 1,000 men maybe that are able to fight. He's using fire, which is kind of funny. I do feel like Witzer will have probably one of the biggest moments of the character in this in terms of strategy between the two brothers, because we did have Ivor talk about how not only has Bjorn and essentially Ube have turned on him, but now that Witzer has turned on him. So it's the thing, we've kind of talked about how he's kind of the one that no one expects to do something so drastic. So it could be that, or he plays the middleman, but it's stab you in the heart and stab you in the heart and let's see what happens. And who knows, maybe he is the one that gets the same treatment as Margaret, where he has to have his brother's wife that he has to take care of or something like that being Brady's. And probably the last thing is we probably will get no scene of Loki next episode. And because that'll be a good thing that we'll leave on for him for that, just to assume that maybe he's dead. And yeah, who knows? We'll get maybe the birth of Bjorn / Alfred's baby next episode, because they did that where in one episode Brady's went from pretty big to having her baby. So maybe it's just because it's Elsa's body type is that she doesn't get as big as most others, but who knows? They may have the royal heir next episode. That'd be a cute way to end off the season.
That's some good predictions. Justin, what do you think?
And the rating of this episode, I'd say it was 8.5. 8.5 ponytails in the fire.
Oh god, that had to stink so bad. Oh, that had to be the nastiest smelling hut on the planet. Just
Yeah, I think that because again, this whole battle for Kattegat, I see them rehashing this for a number of reasons, of course, because it's entertaining, but also that it needs to set these characters up for their last 20 episodes. So the only way I can reason it in my head is we will get Olaf and Harold turning on Bjorn and Vitchek, and that will put Bjorn, Vitchek, and Ivar on the same side because tactical genius or not, the best choice he ever made was going in the sewer. I'll give him that one. But if your legacy is the sewer, scheme, it's not really that big of a legacy. So I think that we can have a few things. Remember Bjorn's loud yelling, spitting speech about before they went over to England for the first time about what battles had they lost, because that's when they learned the most. To see Ivar lose this as well and learn from it, but that would secure Harold the seat of Kattegat in the town of Kattegat, in the country of Kattegat. You know what I mean? That is just it symbolizes their home for us in the show. I get it, but again, it does kind of irk you that it's a trading port. But yeah, I think that gives Harold his position over there in Scandinavia, and it gives him room to expand. And then that sets out our other characters on the paths that they need to go on in order to not only fulfill, because I'm not even looking at the historical aspects of it so much. I'm just looking at what's been foreshadowed in the show. And that's been the chess match with Alfred and all that. So, we need at least Ivar to go over, and it would make sense for maybe, I think if anybody's going to come out of this and be greedy, it could be Vitchek, because he's the only one that actually has not acted like a prick yet. He hasn't had that arc. Bjorn's arc just keeps skyrocketing up and up for being a prick, but he's never weighed down by fucks. He literally has 0 fucks in his pockets at all times. But yeah, I think that we will see a little bit of treachery, and because there's no way, like, again, the troops are just overwhelming. It's an overwhelming force against Ivar. So either he beats them, and that would really piss me off, because it's just, again, Ivar always wins. Who's rooting for Ivar at this point? He needs to get himself knocked down a few levels, and again, then he's still in Kattegat, right? Like, that's not where he needs to be. So he needs to be venturing out towards, what he spoke about, like York. He's like, oh yeah, and York got taken too, we need to get that back. It's like, yeah, like Northumbria, York, like your vast lands over in England are being taken, and you're losing them because you're sitting here in Kattegat calling yourself king, making babies out of peeing on girls, evidently, which is the way Michael Hirst, not my opinion on how babies are made, but Magnus was conceived in that way as well. So yeah, I think that we are going to see a little bit of backstabbing, and we're going to see Magnus for sure die. That'll be the only son of Ragnar, in my opinion, that dies. I'd be very surprised if any of our actual sons died. Vitchek, maybe. I hope not, because he's a really good actor. But yeah, that's my prediction out of this episode. I'd rate this at a 7 out of 10. I think that it really set up a lot of interesting potential story arcs. Let's just hope Michael Hirst doesn't Hirst it up, and let's hope they stick that landing. So it can't. I mean, because what happens if Bjorn wins and then he just sits on the throne of Kattegat? You're just putting these characters in bad situations for what needs to happen for them. You had 20 episodes left. You got to do it. Get it going.
I mean, you and Kenzie, both your points together made me kind of come to something that's going to... Ivar's getting defeated, right? He's going to be spared. I think Vitzer's going to want to kill him, but Bjorn made a point. He's our brother. We can't kill him. Bjorn made a point of saying that in the tent with Vitzer. He's our brother. And this kinslaying thing, it may come down to that. But Vitzer doesn't want to be king. Bjorn doesn't want to be king. I could see Vitzer relinquishing. The seer told Vitzer he would not be king of Kattegat. So you have that right there. Bjorn's not going to be king there. That just, it doesn't fit right. He does not fit there. There's nothing for him there. I could see him, just like Kenzie said, being gravely wounded, this being a loss that Bjorn learns from, going back to his own words. Now Bjorn may not lose the battle, or they may not lose the overall battle, but I believe Bjorn's going to get jacked up. Yeah, and I don't think we'll see Floki again. But what if Ivar goes into exile, and they go completely radical on this, and he ends up somehow in Iceland with Floki because of their connection?
Be nice if it was Ireland.
Yeah, right. But they could leave from there and go on raiding parties, but that would be against Floki's wishes, or he may see. Floki could
We
go
don't.
a few different ways. I like how they set up this because he could go Christian, he could go straight hating everything Christian, or he could just go insane like he already is. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that we don't know how this. I do consider it to be. I've done quite a few videos on it. Poor form with screenwriting. If you leave a story thread on an action and the result of that action, meaning like the outcome of that action, not the result is what you want to see. Like we need to find out if he's alive or dead, and then what does this mean from him? Like you just brought up those good points about what this is he gonna be embracing the carpenter god? Like he said, would it be for the blood eagle? I love that little line. I heard your god's carpenter. So am I. Ours, like what is this? How does this impact our story going forward? But then I would probably like to see him again if they're going to go down that seer route, disappear. But also, like what you guys both brought up earlier, it doesn't necessarily need to be like so straightforward for Uba to screw over Alfred or vice versa. But like, yeah, like we might see a hint of something happening, whether it's the one side or the other, it doesn't matter, but somebody screwing up in East Anglia and having issues with Wessex, causing some problems, and that would maybe flare out of control and give him reason to let Ivar or whoever else comes over take refuge. Because I see Bjorn going, I see him going, he's either back to Byzantium or to Italy. So hopefully, because that's his thing, he pointed on the map. He goes, "This is my destiny."
You do see that there are two kings, Black Dane kings. They seem cool, but we don't
Yeah.
know much about them. We don't know if they have a temper. We don't know how they're going to take to Christians being near them. We don't. There's a lot of fervor for the fire here because they're not really acceptant of this, but they're
They
gonna be
assimilated
forced to
quick.
deal with. No, they're gonna assimilate. But what I'm saying is, a group of a dozen people at minimum is gonna have some kind of problem that they're gonna
Yeah.
create. That's gonna cause this explosion, so to speak. I think, but
Yeah,
I don't know.
that makes sense. I just hope it's not on a large scale. Like that's not the actual catalyst, like for the whole reemergence of like full out war again. Because I think we've got into a point in the show has posed more of a atheist take from both sides when you heard Ragnar and Egbert having their final talk. And a lot of people, I think it's just leaving it up to be obviously up to your own interpretation, but it's going to hopefully turn into more of people just understanding that they're other people, just like they are. Beliefs or no beliefs, they just want to feed their children and live a decent life. I don't want to just keep being Christians versus pagans, because the Vikings assimilated quick, very, very quick. All the evidence they have says that they assimilated within one generation almost completely. It's like, I mean, probably because they're all like Bjorn, and the best way to get along with people is to bone it out. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
It's
they
got to be
worship the
consensual.
strongest being too, right? They worship strength, whatever is winning. So they
Yeah.
see their god is this other god is winning battles for these people. They're going to naturally fight. They're people of war. They worship fighting in a sense. They worship that whole Berserker attitude, that Viking spirit, and
And what is it, mono
live
and
that as well.
polytheistic? Like they are mono, like they don't have to believe in just one god. So like it is more fitting for them and easier for them to actually assimilate, because they already have multiple gods that they worship, so they can just you can squeeze one more into your collection. It's harder for the Christians to become a pagan per se, because their religion says you can't be doing that, um, or it just says
Yeah.
you also shouldn't eat meat on Friday unless you forget you're Catholic. So yeah, but that's I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm excited that all the pieces are set up perfectly for one hell of a chess game. Let's hope Michael Hurst doesn't pull out the checkers board.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see this ritual. It looks like kind of. I'm sure there's gonna be a ritual before the war. We're gonna see it on both sides. Ivar's gonna have a ritual. Olav the Stout's gonna have a ritual. We'll get to hear all about Ragnarok. I'm sure we'll have a little exposition, little dialogue on that there. I think they're gonna try to set it up to dark and dreary, and I do feel like a brother's gonna fall because I mean the whole thing with Ragnarok is family killing family and gods killing gods and everything dying and being reborn again. So that's why I see Bjorn almost dying, or maybe even dying. The same thing's gonna happen with Ivar. Yeah, you could see a metaphorical death with everyone here.
We already have
maybe
with Agatha, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a metaphor. She's already the gods, everything. You know, I mean, like again, it's just my opinion. I just don't see that happening. But man, Michael Hurst never sees things how I see things, and you know, I'm not saying that it would always be better. It's just the way it is. Mackenzie's this year. I'm gonna drop it to her. And thanks everybody for watching. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. Let me do my shameless plugs. You know, follow me on MapQuest. It's my ongoing bad joke, and I will have a video hopefully out on this later. That goes into more details about the story threads that I think he's following as far as the actual history goes. I think he's taken from different periods and mashing it up, and it helps it make a little bit more sense, in my opinion. But yeah, thanks again. Thank you, Johnny, for having me. Thank you, Mackenzie, for having me. It's been a blast, and I'll let you guys do their thing.
No problem, my friend. Kenzie, go ahead and take us out. Go ahead and plug your stuff there.
Oh, you can find me as always on my channel for pretty much every Wednesday is episode club, but now because we have to catch up severely, we have to do more. So there should be at least one or two, maybe this weekend. So that would be 4 and 5, and then after that, yeah, I'm always on Cylon John's, which you can talk about, Johnny, if you want, or I'll just say. And you can also find me here.
Ahead. Sorry.
Until next week, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with Berserker Brunch if we start from the beginning again or something. Who knows? But
yeah. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. It's awesome. We'll be doing Cylon John's, like you said, tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on the Cylon John's network with the Cylon Johns and Jills. I want to thank everyone in the chat. Saturday, I may be doing a Fire and Blood. Stay tuned. Trying to get everybody for the panel, but a good Fire and Blood coming up soon. Jaharius, Alisan, Aria, Alyssa, Rayanna, all that good stuff. Dreamfire, Vermithor, Silverwing. Yes. So that's going to be a fun. It's probably some of the 3 most exciting chapters besides the Dance of Dragons in the entire book. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. And I hope you have a great day. Much love, my friends. Peace.